Well, welcome everybody. My name is Chad Pollitt. Welcome to the Virtual Content Marketing Summit. It's brought to you by Relevance.com and the Marketing Scope. And we're fortunate enough today to be joined by a New York Times best-selling author.
Where?
Jay Baer.
Where? Oh, right here.
Right here.
Right here.
Right here. Now, I thought we'd do things a little different today. Everybody knows Jay's expertise when it comes to social media and content. But what I asked Jay to do today is to kind of peel back what he does and what his organization does and some of the content strategies and the ideas that he implements and executes on a daily basis. And I've asked him to share that with us today. So without further ado, let's dive in. So Jay, thank you.
My pleasure, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about was your new marketingpodcast.com.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us the skinny on what that is and how valuable it is for marketers out there today?
So there are, of course, tons and tons of podcasts and more all the time, not only just in marketing, but in every walk of life. And one of the reasons why podcasts have become so popular is that it's the only form of content that you can actually consume while you're doing something else, right? So you can listen to a podcast while you're chopping wood. Well, that's a bad example. You could listen to a podcast while you're commuting or working out or what have you, but you can't read a blog post while you're driving, but you can listen to a podcast while you're driving. Mm-hmm. And so as people get busier and busier and busier, podcasting really makes more sense because you can A, get in depth into topics, and B, it's very time efficient. And so we're seeing this huge growth of podcasts and marketing podcasts in particular, but yet previously there was no way to find those podcasts. And so this is a true story. A few months ago, I was looking at some other podcasts, trying to find some other podcasts that are similar to some of the shows that I produce. And I went to iTunes and it was a complete hot mess, right? So unless you're on that very first page of New and Notable, it's like Yahoo circa 1996. It's really not a very fan-friendly experience. There really is no discovery component to speak of. And then I thought, well, okay, maybe iTunes doesn't have a search engine that really works, but surely this exists, right? And so I was sort of doing some searches and some Googling and looking for marketing podcasts, and I found some blog posts from people who said, hey, here's my favorite marketing podcasts, et cetera, but that's not really a search engine either. It's a blog post. And so I realized quite quickly that, in fact, it doesn't exist. There heretofore was no way to find and discover marketing podcasts based on topic. I'm like, this is insane. It's 2015. How does this not exist? And so I went to my development team and said, look, I don't even care if we have a business model. This is unconscionable that this doesn't exist. Let's just build it. And so we did. We built a very robust website called marketingpodcast.com, which is totally mobile optimized, which allows you to discover and find podcasts based on length of show, based on topic, based on host, based on other shows that you like. We have a complete rating system that uses the iTunes API and does a bunch of algorithmic gymnastics to rate shows. We do weekly reviews of 5 or 6 shows. We pull shows out and we review them the same way that Rolling Stone would review albums. So it's been really, really enormously successful, and a lot of people who are in the marketing podcast community really love it because it gives them a way now to sort of discover other shows and tell their audience to go to this site to find other shows. It's been a real labor of love, but one that I think has a lot of potential.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So if a brand or say an agency starts a podcast and they want to make sure their podcast is on your website, how do they go about doing that?
Great question. So on the marketingpodcast.com site, we have a kind of add your podcast form. And fill that form out, give us the name of the show, the iTunes URL so we can make sure to find it. There are a few precursors that have to be met in order to be included in our database. You have to have at least 5 episodes, and you have to have published at least 1 episode within the last 6 months. So we're not going to have shows in the database that their last show was 2012, right? It's just silly. So you have to be a current show, you have to have at least 5 episodes, and so that we know you actually have some measure of audience, you have to have at least 5 iTunes reviews. So if you're a new show and you don't have a lot of reviews yet, just in your next episode, ask your listeners to go to iTunes and review, and then come to our website, submit it, and then we have a whole editorial team that looks at them, scans them, categorizes them, and puts them into the database.
Oh, that's great. Because we all know content promotion is a big thing nowadays. and having a place like that to
Yeah.
promote your podcast can
Yeah.
be huge.
No doubt. And we've thought about in the next iteration of the site, sort of adding a real promotion layer, Chad, where for example, podcasters who are really interested in growing their audience could, in the same way that Google does, pay us to be at the top of the search results, right? Sort of a paid placement kind of an idea. We've got a few other business models that we're kicking around to turn the site from just a straight utility to something that actually has a promotional layer for certain podcasters.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So I hear you got a new podcast coming out.
Speaking of podcast, yeah, I have two actually. Speaking of podcasts, one is one that I've been doing for a little while now. I'm on episode, as we're talking today, episode 78, but they accrue quickly. 78 because I do 3 a week. It's called Jay Today. It's a video podcast. Each episode is just 3 minutes, 3 minutes long, but I record 3 of them a week, and it's very low tech. Not all these fancy lights and cameras like we got here, but I just shoot it on my iPhone and I upload it to Candidio, which is a video production company in Indianapolis where you live. Great guys, and they do the post-production and put it out there. So the Jay Today show is just sort of me weighing in on social media, on content marketing, on business, on life, 3 times a week. And then we have a new show that rolled out that we're producing. Convince to Convert, my company is producing, but I'm not on air, called Content Pros, which is sort of a companion to my longstanding podcast, Social Pros. And Content Pros is hosted by Chris Moody from Oracle Marketing Cloud, a fantastic content marketer, and Amber Naslund from Sysomos, who is a fantastic social media marketer and was the co-author of my first book, The Now Revolution. And so each week they interview people who are content marketers, director of content, vice president of content, chief content officer from some of the biggest and most noteworthy brands in the world, and talk about sort of their story inside baseball. Like, okay, well, how do you go about actually promoting content, making content, paying for content, staffing content, etc.
Awesome.
Content
awesome.
Pros podcast.
Now, Jay, when we spoke earlier, you talked about taking one content asset and turning it into multiple content assets. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, look, if you're watching this video, you know that the biggest challenge for most businesses is creating enough high quality content. I mean, once you're bought in, you're like, yeah, content works, makes sense. Then it's okay, well, how do we get enough content? And so there are several different ways to do that, but I think the most effective way is to atomize your content, is what I called it in my book, Utility, which is take one big idea, one piece of content, and then create a bunch of smaller pieces of content based on that one scheme. What you're trying to do is chum the informational waters in as many places as possible. You know, people drive themselves crazy in the content marketing industry trying to reinvent the wheel, when what they could do is just make more of the same wheels they already have. So the example that you're talking about, my Jay Today videos, little 3-minute videos that I talked about a moment ago. So I shoot one of those. It takes me 3 minutes to shoot it. It takes me 2 minutes to upload it, and I'm done, 5 minutes. And then my team takes it and edits it and then puts it everywhere. So each 3-minute video becomes an iTunes audio podcast, an iTunes video podcast. We transcribe it and make a blog post of it on convinceaconvert.com. We have our own video hosting engine at jtoday.tv. We also take that transcription, edit it slightly, and make it a LinkedIn blog post. We also edit it slightly and put it on Medium. And we take the video and put the video on Facebook, which has actually become enormously successful. In fact, you might find this interesting, Chad. We're getting more video plays on the Jay Today show on Facebook than we are on YouTube.
Wow.
Consistently, every day, which I find really, really interesting. And I think that is a trend that is going to continue. So every single video that I create takes me 5 minutes, becomes 7 content assets. Right. So at that point, it starts to almost cross-promote itself, right? And so it feels like, you know, you're being enveloped by this content when the repackaging of it is not terribly difficult.
Right, right. Wow, that's some serious content promotion, Jay. That's awesome. There's a lot of takeaways out of that.
Yeah, it's a whole system. And, you know, it took a while to get the system figured out, right? So once the episode gets uploaded, then what do we do? And then how do we take it here, and who approves it, and when, and what time? And just, there's a lot of process steps and multiple people involved in our organization. But it took us a couple of months, frankly, to kind of get it dialed.
Right.
For example, if you're going to take a video and you're going to transcribe it and you're going to put it on Medium, well, what do you change from the straight transcription to make it feel more like a blog post that would be written in Medium? Do you actually embed the video itself into Medium? Like, there's a lot of these like little things that you've got to think through, but once you kind of go through that process, it just, right, it runs on rails.
Awesome.
And everybody can do that. Everybody can. I mean, this video that we're shooting right now could be, we could chop this up into little segments, right? This could be 8 different 3-minute videos. It could be a bunch of Instagram videos. It could be a bunch of Vine videos. It could be several blog posts. It could be an infographic. It could be a slide share. It could be a LinkedIn blog post. It could be a Medium blog post. It could be an audio podcast. Right off the top of my head, I can think of 10 or 15 things we could do with the video that we're shooting right now. Meta. But that's how you got to think. It's not about make something new. It's make more out of what you already have.
Gotcha. That's a great takeaway. So I've read your book. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Utility. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet.
I agree.
I
read the new one though, the short one that I just put out, Utility for Real Estate. Sure, it's actually, I shouldn't say this out loud. I think it's actually better than Utility. It's written for real estate, but any small business person I think would really enjoy it. It's like 75 pages, really short. And it's only $2.99 on Amazon, right? Which is silly. It's $2.99. I think it's the best thing I've ever written.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. I highly recommend you do too, as well. So I hear there's another book on the horizon, possibly.
Yeah, working on it. I mean, so I've been doing these utility verticals, right? So I did utility for accountants, recently published utility for real estate. The next one in that series will probably be utility for restaurants, because there are so many restaurants out there and they are so universally bad at marketing, generally speaking, right? It's like word of mouth or bust, right? There's like no middle ground with those guys. So I think they have a lot of lessons to learn about content marketing and social media. So utility for restaurants is something I'll be working on, but I've got a new full length, what you'd call sort of big book that I'm just cranking up, and I don't have a title for it yet, but the idea is that we've sort of crossed this chasm now, and we've sort of passed the horizon line where we're now at a point as a society where it's actually better to be fast than it is to be good. That if somebody asks you a question personally or in a business context, if you can answer them quickly, that counts more than the actual context of the answer. And I'm doing a bunch of research to kind of put some numbers around that scenario. So I'm going to write a book about what does that mean? I mean, what does it mean when speed is more important than anything else in the world?
Yeah, so that's very interesting that you're working on that, because I've sort of felt that in the work that I do on occasion. I've seen where speed trumped perfection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you just talked about your videos. You spend 5 minutes on those videos, where someone else that's a perfectionist could spend hours on that video, right? Well, if you spend 5 minutes and you get it out quicker, that's better than perfect.
Well, think about, and I know your consulting company at Relevance does some of this. You think about so the real time kind of writing the hashtag newsjacking kind of a thing, right? Which really, really works. And a lot of times it's not about who got the story right. It's about who reported the story first. Think about even in a sports context. I'm a big sports fan. Think about how many kind of quote unquote NFL insiders there are. ESPN has a dozen of them, and CBS and NBC and individual teams and Pro Football Talk and all these second and third tier blogger guys. They're always out there trying to scoop one another, and people are just reporting innuendo as fact. But if they're first, if they report it first, even if it's not factual, then they get credit for being first, right? And that same thing is happening in business and in life. We are rewarding speed now above accuracy, above fact, above quality. And I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle, but I don't know that we're better off as a society at that point.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to get your most recent book, Utility, where would they go to do that?
You can probably get Utility any place or any way that utility books or books in general are gotten. Should be able to get it at your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble or some independent bookseller. Certainly Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. You can get it as an audiobook through Audible, read by yours truly. All those different ways.
So Jay, you know my big thing over at Relevance is content promotion.
Yeah.
I've written about it a lot. I've written a book about content promotion. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts around content promotion and its value today.
Well, I mean, it's almost an existential question, right? It's almost a chicken and the egg scenario, because if you have content that isn't promoted, what's the point of having the content?
Right.
You may get some accidental content consumption through long tail Google searches, things like that, but it's not really going to do anything for your business in large measure. I wrote a lot about in my book Utility the concept of marketing your marketing, which is very aligned with what you talk about in terms of content promotion. And I see this all the time in our consulting business, working with big companies all around the world, that a lot of times, Chad, they have good content. They have smart content marketers. They have real resources dedicated to these kind of things. I mean, they're actually making cool stuff. But a lot of times it doesn't actually go anywhere. It's not getting views, it's not getting shares, it's not getting clicks, it's not getting plays. It's just not doing anything. And it's not because the thing that they've made or the things that they are making are not meritorious or aren't good or not strategically valid. It's that nobody knows about them.
Right.
Nobody knows that this great content even exists. We have fooled ourselves into this crazy lie which says good content succeeds, bad content fails. And that is 100% not true. Good content that is promoted succeeds. Bad content that is promoted often succeeds, right? So I actually believe that content promotion and being good at content promotion is more important than being good at content creation, because you can succeed with one but not the other.
Yeah.
And that is something that most people are just now starting to awaken to. And what's hard about content promotion is that a lot of times you do not awake to the power of content promotion until you put your heart and soul and guts and dollars into creating content that doesn't succeed. Because you know it's good. You know that it's good and it doesn't go anywhere, and you're like, what the hell just happened? Nothing happened. Why? Because you didn't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that reminds me of the scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's gagging. When I've written content that I knew was good, and before I started doing promotion, I felt that feeling down in my gut.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Just happened.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, I want to thank you.
My pleasure.
For allowing us in here.
Cool project, cool event.
Awesome. Again, my name's Chad Pollitt. I'm with Relevance.com, and this is brought to you by Relevance and the Marketing Scope. Thank you.